Hey everyone, Chris here. It's been a couple weeks since I've been able to get on the car. Back in here, it's a couple days before New Year's Day. It's flipping cold outside. It is currently, it's warmed up to minus 29 degrees Celsius. Been pretty cold for the past couple days here, but it's nice and toasty in the shop. So we got no problems working on the car. I've got a little bit of work done. I've started attaching our little spring pockets to the chassis of the car. I'm going to carry on doing that and see if we can't get started on the Crossmember and mounting the steering rack today. Check it out. I use a wire wheel to polish the chassis, give myself a smooth surface to mark and to tack to. All my filler pieces will be made from 1/8 flat bar, cut to fit with an angle grinder and using a hammer and a vise to shape them. And then it's multiple trips back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, test fitting and notching and grinding and bending until it fits properly. So you can see here I've left a little gap in between what would be the original engine mounting bracket and the little filler piece that I put. I want to be able to grind that kind of flat so it all looks like one piece once it's done. So I left that gap in there for the weld to fill that, and then when I grind it down smooth, it's not going to grind the weld right up. So there's a nice little, I don't know, about a 1/16 gap in there, and we'll fill that up with the welder. So I've got the driver's side done. It's all welded up. I've kind of polished up some of the welds. I'm fairly happy with it. What are you doing? I got one more side to do, patch filler pieces all around and get it welded to the chassis, and then we can start laying out the Crossmember. It's taking a little longer than I imagined, but we're getting it done anyways. I've got some other stuff I'm starting to get a little anxious to do, anxious to show everybody, but I want to get this done first, and that's going to include painting and everything. I just want to be done the front end all together. I'm waiting on shipment of parts coming in to help put the front end back together properly, and then we'll move on. I've got some really neat stuff where we're going to do some experimenting and stuff in the rear end and in the cockpit, so I think that'll be pretty cool to see. But this is the biggest job of them all, I think, so I want to get this done. So I'm going to jump back to it. Another low budget tip for you. I got this big mess of grinding discs, polishing wheels and whatnot. Take a look at this number here. That was the item number at the auction that I got it from. Years ago, Scotty and I used to go to the industrial auctions every now and then, and we'd load up on this kind of stuff. You just get boxes of random shop supplies, grinding discs, cutting wheels. It's got it all. Some of it's used. We got some used cutting wheels. They still got some decent life left in them. Some of it's brand new. Stuff like this. That's a brand new polishing wheel. These go upwards of $10 a piece. Stuff like this. That's a brand new grinding wheel. And then right down we got some used grinding wheels here. If I remember correctly, it was $4 or $5 you get one of these for. We used to get a number of them. I know Scotty's got a bunch still at his shop. It's probably been 8 or 9 years that we've had this box kicking around. Decent stuff like these grinding stones. You just get a case of them unused. Sometimes they're manufacturer rejects. Sometimes it's shops shutting down and having to clear out all their stuff. But nonetheless, it's good value. Grinding discs and stuff are usually pretty universal. They're usually pretty good. The zip discs you really want to take a close look at before you use a mystery zip disc, right? You want to make sure that the center's still good. There's no hairline cracks around it. There's no chips taken out of the edges. You don't want to fire up the grinder and have one of those things blow up on you. So you really want to take a good look at the zip disc. But everything else is usually fairly well to look at. I got grinding discs of different shapes, different depths, different abrasiveness, and I haven't had to buy one in probably close to 10 years. It's something worth checking out if you're looking for shop supplies on a budget. I think that's going to be a retry. I think I can work with that. That's a pretty small gap now. I'll do it. So I've got my spring pockets welded onto the chassis. Fairly happy with them. Most of my filler plates and stuff worked out pretty good. I did completely butcher one area of it, and I'm not going to show you guys. If you ever want to see it, catch me outside at the racetrack and see if you can find it for yourself. But nonetheless, Most of it turned out pretty good. Fairly happy with it. It's going to be pretty strong. So I'm going to move on to building the Crossmember. I've got this old hunk of junk here. I've got the old section of the Crossmember that I cut up. Basically, the only thing I need to know from this is the angle that the steering rack was mounted on. So these are different. At some point, and I can't remember why, I changed the angle of the mounting position on this Crossmember. I kind of raised the angle up a little bit. I don't know if that was to accommodate the steering column or if it was because I changed racks at some point, but nonetheless, it's changed from this one to this one. So all I really need to know is that angle. Just for curiosity's sake, we can look at that. It says we're looking at 60, we'll call it, no, that's 58 degrees. And if we stick this one on here, we're looking at roughly 48 degrees. So I'm going to go with the 48 degrees. That will keep the angle the same for the steering shaft. And then I won't have to mess with any of that stuff. Essentially, I'm just going to use some 2x2 square tubing, which I've got right here, and mount some tabs to it right in the center to get that where it needs to be located, and then find a way to put it in the car. And then now that I'm done with this hunk of junk, I really never want to see it again. So I'm going to use the engine mount as my reference point here to get the location of where the Crossmember goes. I kind of want it to sit right in the high rib of the oil pan here. This needs to be an extremely precise measurement, so I'm going to set my square so we're coming down level. Hit my tape measure up. Looks like we're center of the hole. We're level. I'm going to eyeball that to 5 inches, and it doesn't get any more precise than that. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to cut this down to a close length to this cutout. I'll cut it out a little bit longer. This cutout is about 22.5. So I'm going to make this, we'll cut this out at 28 inches. And then I'm going to get the mounting tabs on here first and get the steering rack mounted to here, because it's not the 5 inches to center of this, it's a 5 inches to the center of where the steering rack mounts. If I make this 5 inches, it's going to suit this back, and then that's going to hit the sump on the oil pan. So I'm going to get this all fabricated and mounted to the steering rack, and then we'll find out where our center line is in the car and put it in. So I'm just going to mount my tabs center of this piece, so then when I shorten it, I'll just shorten it by both sides as opposed to trying to guess where I need to be. It'd be easier to just take equal amounts off each side and keep it nice and symmetrical. So I've got some heavier angle here. This is 3/16, might even be a 1/4 inch. But I think I'm going to use that to mount my clamps to, and then I'm just gonna drill and tap the holes into here. I was gonna use some thinner stuff and weld a nut on the back, but this will work just as well. So I'm just gonna cut myself for, I don't know, 1.5 inch pieces, tack them onto the tube, drill and tap them. Bolt that down, and that's done. It's simple. So I've got the holes threaded in the Crossmember. I'm using a 9/16 bolt to bolt up the steering rack. I went with a 17/64 pilot hole to tap with. I probably could have got away with like a, what did I write down here, a 9/32s. Reason I went a little bit smaller, it takes a little bit more effort. You got to be a little more careful threading the hole, but you can maximize that thread depth with the meat only being a 1/4 inch thick. If you drill that hole too big and try and tap it, there's a really good chance you can thread it or strip it. This way the threads will stay strong, they'll bite hard, and less chance of it coming loose. So I've run into my first problem, something I kind of overlooked, where the pinion comes out of the steering rack here. It's kind of on an angle compared to the flat bottom of these mounting brackets here. So what's happening is it's hitting right here on the tube and it's not allowing it to go down all the way. So what I'm gonna have to do is kind of mark things out and put a notch in there, and then run a piece of pipe or something in there to fill it up and strengthen it up. So a little bit more work than anticipated. So I've got it honed out. I had a piece of scrap exhaust tubing kicking around. Looks like it lines up pretty good. Gives us the clearance we need. It's a little big on the back end, but I'm not too worried about that. We'll see if we can bolt it down. So I got this thing in here. I've trimmed it up, I shorted up to fit in between the spring pockets. I trimmed up the steering rack mounts, and I've attached the steering column, and everything seems to fit really good. I squared it up with this front bar here to make sure that it's in square. Rotated it through a steering cycle to make sure that the steering column all works well. Our angle lines up with the measurement that we took on the bench, and my precision eyeball measurements line up right where we need to be. So I'm pretty happy with it. I didn't expect to be tacking it in at this point, but I'm gonna go ahead and tack it in. I'm still gonna need to make some mounts for the ends here, just some extra brackets where they come off the edge, which is what I figured I would have to do. Ideally, I'd like to be able to place the motor in here and make sure that the oil pan has clearance. But based on the rough measurements I took, we're going to be extremely close. So I might be able to adjust the height of the engine when I make the new engine mounts. Or we just need to notch this again, which will be really easy to do inside the car with this style of Crossmember. So I'm going to go ahead and tack this all in. That about does it for me today. Starting to burn out, to be honest with you. Anyways, I'm pretty happy with the progress I made. I just got to cap off the new Crossmember, and it's pretty much done. So next time you see me working on this thing, it's probably just going to be paint, to be honest. I'm going to have it all cleaned up. I'm going to pull a few things off of there. Just give it a fresh coat of paint. I'm feeling lazy this year, but I do want to change things up. So I think to get away from the copper pipes, I'm gonna go back to white on the pipes and then keep everything else black again. But just the visible stuff. I'm not going as far as taking the car apart and painting it all up again. I've done that too many times. So I'm just gonna take the stuff that you can pretty much see from outside the car, and I'm gonna paint that up. So I might even recruit some help to come paint this thing with me. Anyways, most of the fab work on the front is done. That makes me happy. I don't have to see this dirty old thing anymore either. That's all I got. Just want to wish everyone a happy new year. Hopefully 2018 brings you guys success on and off the racetrack. And until next time, we'll catch you guys later. Thanks for watching.